This video is designed to be a little bit advanced and taking us past what I talked about in the previous video, where I was talking about elbows should tuck, and as that part of the movement is happening, the hand actually rotates outward slightly. So I want to go beyond that, and this is not going to be of interest to everybody because it doesn't relate one-to-one with Yang style Tai Chi. But what this does show you is how the arms can be most efficient in any movement. And if you do practice these movements, you'll find that you can apply them to Yang style, just not exactly as presented here. So the other night I was fooling around, as I often do, and I was just playing around with the idea of if my elbow was actually lying on something, and I didn't want to raise my shoulder, what would the extent of the rotation be, or the circle be, that I could make with that arm? And what if I reversed it? What would happen? You keep dropping the elbow and the shoulder, and you'll find that you're restricted within the boundaries of your own body. Especially right now, I'm not doing any turning or anything, so it's even more restricted. But a very surprising idea came out of that I had heard before but hadn't really paid a lot of attention to. So right now what I'm demonstrating mostly is just a circle that we can make, and if you make it really, really sloppy, but restrained by the fact that your elbow has to sink and your shoulder has to sink. Now you can make all kinds of wild, crazy circles, but again, they're lacking integrity and root, and they really don't relate in any way to your Tai Chi. So to restrain our arm according to Tai Chi principles, which says elbow always down and shoulder always down, if instead of having mostly what you see people doing is straight line movement, which is not entirely correct. We should be rotating when we're doing Tai Chi at all times. So this idea of my fooling around was to extend it out just a little bit. But at the time that I was doing this, I actually did have something I could drop my elbow onto. So if you can find a table, or you can rest it on a bench or anything like that, even on a chair with you kneeling on the floor, without moving, the hips, that is very restrained. It just looks like that. And I resorted several times to going back to, let's just kind of fool around, right? Let's just fool around. And what's this going to look like? Then with an opening stretch made out into the hand, which is again, this is a basic principle of Tai Chi. We have to be connected in all parts and moving as a single unit. So if the hand's kind of wobbly and flipping, that's also not Tai Chi. But creating this line that goes to my elbow and shoulder, and if I was standing, it would be on my hip as well. That's the kind of motion that you get out of it. And you can extend it by turning. Now I'm sitting, but I can still shift weight very subtly and turn through my hip area. So that's what it starts looking like. A really basic circle, and well worth spending some time on. I don't want to say too much about it today, but if you are interested, I'm going to go further right now. If you find that these exercises are of interest, email me through Patreon if you wish, and we can talk about, maybe I can do more videos like this, and hopefully people will start to realize just how very valuable these movements are. So even coming out, you can see on this motion that my shoulder and elbow went down, and that actually drove my hand up. When I start to go out, if I raise my shoulder like that, once again I'm disconnected. So what has to happen is that the sink through here continues, and you can see how that's driving my arm all the way through that part of it. Now again I sink, and the turn brings the hand out into this kind of a position. So here's something, it's a detail and may not be of interest at this stage of most people's development, but I have been talking quite a bit lately about connecting to your fingers, and in some of our exercises I've been mentioning little finger and index finger especially, and I'll show you one of the reasons why right now. They're pivot points. So mostly we pivot through the joints, but we also have to aim our pivot out into externals, and in this case it's the hand. It could be that you're pushing the rotation up to the top of your head. You should be. And this rotation goes to many, many different parts of your body. On this movement, at the end of it, that rotation is here on my little finger. So coming down like this, it's all through this finger, right up until this transition where it goes to this finger. And that is the main pivot point until, once again, at the end of that small rotation, it's here again. So, is this important? That depends how far you want to go with your Tai Chi. But yes, it's very, very important in the higher stages of learning. So that's one basic movement. And here you can see that my elbow and my little finger, this whole side is dominant. There's a switching effect that's happening as the hand turns. I mean, right here the hand is pointing outwards. Here the palm is facing inwards. And at the end of that facing inwards, the rotation goes directly to there. And this is very, very important. Later stages you will find that I can expand on this also if people are interested, but that same figure 8 motion happens in the hips. If you're shifting your weight back and forth, doing push and press, or almost any of our stances, what should happen in our hips is not just a simple open, close, or rotate in, rotate out kind of motion. Between the two hips, we're actually creating a long figure 8 that has a small loop at each end of it. The small loop is where we do this same turnaround that I'm doing on my hand, but we do it inside our hips. So that also is a little bit advanced, and maybe a lot of people aren't interested in taking their Tai Chi that far. But if you want Peng in your body, and if you want root, and if you want to be able to adjust properly so that every millimeter of change in your posture has all the attributes of Tai Chi, then this is essential, and eventually this also becomes essential. So here's one slightly different version of this. Now, doing this, because I am just kind of fooling around, not being too serious about it, I'm changing my vision. But what should happen is that we pick one spot. So right now my spot is here. I don't change my vision, so there has to be rotation on the head and neck as my torso, my hips are turning. And that's it. So that's a little bit interesting to me, and I hope it's interesting to you. So that's one circle. Now the reverse circle, loosely done, again just fooling around and maintaining the idea of heavy elbow, heavy shoulder, right? Not popping up either in shoulder or elbow, and then refine it slightly. So I'm still not refining it too much at this point. I'm keeping it kind of a lazy movement, but I am working my shoulder a lot. I'm really getting a lot of loosening in through here, and I'm getting used to the idea that your hand, your arm, doesn't work very well unless you pivot on the elbow and the shoulder. If you're just moving back and forth and doing something like that, especially, it's really bad. It's not Tai Chi. To get closer to Tai Chi, we have to have those kind of movements. Okay, and again, doing it with both hands, that's more what it looks like. You see my elbows are tight into my body at all times. Okay, so that's an interesting one. Now here's one last one, and this one I kind of disguise it a little bit and do it with my students sometimes. It's this motion of pulling the elbow inwards very, very strongly, but having a rotation outwards on your hand. And it's really kind of interesting when you do this with a partner. When they push you, they expect to trap you, and their power is going to sit on your body. But if you do this movement correctly with an aim out into your fingers, I can get people to tell you that this has happened to them more than one time. They push on my elbow, and the energy circular through here actually knocks them backwards. So they don't get to trap me. If I just did this with my arm, they would trap me, and then if they were strong enough, they would push me over. But because of this circularity, that rotation, my energy is actually going this way as they're pushing this way. So they're helping to knock themselves over. And that's a really good example of this is how Tai Chi should work. It's by rotation, not by being stiffy and moving linear. That's a different art altogether. So this motion turns into that motion. All we have to do is focus a little bit more on this part. You can see my hand rotation is happening, again, because of the rotation through elbow and shoulder. And even through here, this kind of motion is keeping this hand really, really strong. And it should be that you're strong. You know, what's that look like, right? That's starts right wing and yang style. So same over here. And there are pieces in some of the Tai Chi that I do where both elbows come in. So when that happens, you can't touch yourself because you're busy out here, of course. But I can feel major engagement through my shoulders, through my back, through my chest, through almost all parts of my body, trying to bring my elbows in. And of course here, I'm compressing a little bit. I'm not doing something like that that's going to block all my movement. I'm doing this, but even as I do that, I can feel my pectoral is pushing forward. It's engaging outward as my chest slightly releases inward like that. So this is really, really good for the whole yoke up here, and will help to loosen your shoulders and to loosen your elbows and help you connect your entire body out into your hands. So just a little bit light today, but like I said, if you find it interesting, let me know. And perhaps we can get a little bit more formal and go into more detail. So thanks for watching the video.